Hello. Today we are back with yet another interview, this time with Cerulean. Now, if you don't know, Cerulean is the writer of Intrepid, Atonement, and also his own web serial novel called Heretical Edge. Thank you for joining me today, Cerulean. How did you discover Worm?
Ah, that's actually kind of a weird answer, 'cause I don't really remember where I got it from. I had it in my bookmarks of things I should read at some point because clearly, someone linked it to me, but I cannot remember who it was. And, it was just sitting there in my bookmarks for about, like 6 months or so because I had no idea what it was even about. I mean, the title doesn't really tell you that much. And that's all I knew was the title. And I was under the impression that it was some kind of Michael Crichton-esque super science story for some reason. Then, one day I was bored and, just clicking through my bookmarks to clean them up a bit. I found that one for Worm still there and decided to look at it for the first time. So I clicked around a bit and figured out it was a superhero story. Which, I really don't think it's a very big secret that I love female protagonists at this point. And I also love superheroes. So I started reading. After that, well, I kind of tore through the story every chance I got. The story was completed by that point, so I didn't really have to wait around for updates, which was nice because, for someone who likes cliffhangering everyone else so much, I really hate experiencing it myself. So once I was finished with reading it, that was just before my friend and I were moving up from Colorado to Washington. I needed something to read in the car, and well, I was still on a worm, on a high for worm. So I looked up fanfiction for it on fanfiction.net, which led me to, oh, what was it? Oh, right, it was Silencio by Deviant and I saw from, I think it was reviews in the comments for that story that it was actually being copied over from some other site that I've never heard of called Space Battles. And that was that there was more of it on that site that hadn't been copied over yet. So, because I wanted to read more of it, I Googled it, found the forum for Space Battles, and started reading there. And then I read some other fan fiction too. And then by the time we made it up to Washington, I wanted to write some worm fiction of my own. And actually, it was Madison appearing in Silencio that reminded me that she existed and might be a good person to write a POV from, a point of view. So yeah, that's how I found Worm and how I found Worm fanfiction and how I found Space Battles.
You have a penchant for insane cliffhangers and plot twists to the point where people are calling them Cerulean twists. How do you do that? How much is planned and how much is. I guess that works.
Well, honestly, if you think my current stories have a lot of cliffhangers, you probably should have seen one of the first original stories I wrote. It was on a different forum in, well, pretty much every single chapter, ended with some big cliffhanger or twist. A big part of that was to keep the readers interested. But, another part of it was to keep my own interest. Because, my mind has a tendency to wander a bit, and, well, sometimes it's hard for me to focus on just one idea or story. Uh, that's probably why Intrepid has 4 different viewpoints and about, what is it, like 8 different storylines going on. Uh, well, anyway, to combat that, I started writing cliffhangers for myself because then I would want to see how they were resolved. That was sort of my way of getting past my own lack of focus. Because, if nothing else, there'd be pressure from readers to resolve it. And I would want to see it resolved. But beyond that, I've also done a lot of the online role playing stuff, on various forums. And I've run several of those games. And I learned to motivate players to respond to the storyline or whatever I was trying to run by hitting them with those cliffhangers and keep them interested. That made them, they want to see what was next. So they'd be more likely to respond with their own actions. And then I just took that and translated it into my own regular writing. Anyway, as far as planning it goes, it's kind of 50-50. Some of the twists I plan out pretty far ahead of time, and then others I just stumble into. There's been a few that I've really just kind of tripped over. I've said before that my writing process is basically to take a walk around, walk around the neighborhood and plan out the whole chapter in my head. I'll work out the dialogue and specific events and where it all fits in the chapter and everything like that. And sometimes I have the end of the chapter in mind first, and then I work backwards from there. Like, okay, this is where I want to leave them. How do I get to that point? And then again, knowing where I want the chapter to end, what sort of big revelation or twist or whatever I want to end on, it motivates me to get through the rest of the chapter because I want to get to that point. And also, I love trolling people that get pissy about what looks like a huge mistake or a screw up on my part, and then take the rug out from under them. I guess I'm kind of mean about that sometimes.
What was your favorite part of Worm?
Hmm, my favorite part. Hmm. Well, there's several parts that really, stand out. It's hard to pick a favorite, and I'm terrible about picking favorites. I can't even pick a favorite drink. There's there's scenes and events and stuff that I just happen to like a lot, and in no real particular order, I really like the whole scene where Taylor and Jess and Trickster go to the mayor's house and they have that fight with Triumph and Prism. I really like that scene partly because Taylor comes off as a real badass, and because it kind of shows how far she's come. She's fallen pretty far by that point, and I think it nicely encapsulates the rest of the story itself. I mean, she's terrorizing these innocent people. She is the bad guy there. She absolutely is. But because of the way the story is presented, you still sympathize with her. You still know why she's doing it, and you root for her. She's literally the bad guy attacking a couple heroes, and yet somehow you stay on her side. I mean, not everyone, obviously. It's a very hard tightrope to walk, but I think Wild Bow made it nice, manages it nicely most of the time. And even if you don't particularly like her by that point, and I know a lot of people don't, you still understand what she's doing and why. But yeah, I think that sequence there is a really good microcosm of how the rest of the story works. So I like the whole bit for that. It works well on multiple levels. Beyond that, I'd say I like the early parts when she's part of the Undersiders and the world is still being fleshed out. I really like the whole battle against Long in the ABB and where all the other gangs are joining up because the ABB has just gone completely batshit. And, of course I like it where they finally beat Coil and his mercs turn on him, and that was a long time coming, and that victory was definitely earned. Uh, what else? Actually, another one of my favorite parts is when Taylor and Armsmaster, I mean, Defiant make up and he admits what a dick he was. I think that works really well. Anything between Dragon and Defiant or Armsmaster is really well done. Dragon, I think, is probably my favorite Kanan character in Worm as depicted by Wildbow. Either her, Tattletale, of course, which I think is a lot of people's favorite, and if they don't hate her, they love her. For me, it's either Tattletale or uh, Dragon. Dragon is probably my favorite. And actually, with the whole Dragon and Defiant thing in mind, another one of my favorite scenes is after the whole clusterfuck at Arcadia where they outed Taylor's identity, when Pigott and Tag and them are getting pissy with Dragon and Defiant about whether they purposefully made that look as bad as possible while letting the students get a video of it. And Defiant is basically like, screw you, what are you going to do? Put me in the birdcage? Because that's where Dragon is. I think that whole scene gets ignored or skimmed over a lot, but it's one of my favorites.
You've consistently humanized and focused on the trio and Taylor in such an interesting light that I don't think anyone else really does. Is there any reason behind that?
Well, honestly, I just really like redemption stories. I love female characters, and I like to take little used characters and expand them, which people who've read my Animorphs fiction should know. Uh, so Emma and the other girls, they kind of hit that trifecta. I know a lot of people just want to hate the trio and see them humiliated, destroyed, ruined. For some people, Emma and Madison and Sophia are bigger villains than the people like Jack Slash, which it does make sense because bullying is stuff that the average reader has actually seen or experienced. they have more of a connection to it. It's like that whole 10 dead people is a tragedy, 1,000 is a statistic thing. It's more real and direct, so it affects them more directly. Uh, Basically, I really don't like the idea that they're irredeemable just because they've done bad things. People can change. That's just how I choose to write these girls, because I write what I would like to read. I know it's easy to villainize them, but I'd rather, humanize them. Basically, except in rare cases, I don't like the idea that a person is inherently evil or inherently good. I'm a big believer in your choices defining you. That's kind of one of the major points of Heretical Edge, which is why I actually thought it was amusing very early on when someone told me they didn't like the idea that all supernatural creatures are evil. Anything not human is evil. I think I told them to just try to keep reading because, well, obviously I don't like that either. But yeah, as far as the trio goes, I kind of took it as a challenge to make them more interesting than just, the school bullies. Give them more of a character and personality. So hopefully I've achieved that for some people that are still reading.
I also follow your web serial, and can I just say it's absolutely mind boggling that you can juggle Heretical Age, Atonement, and Intrepid at the same time. How is writing a web serial difficult to writing fanfiction?
I think some people would object to saying that I'm juggling Atonement that well right now, but I promise, guys, there is more coming. Uh, anyway, how is writing a web serial different from fanfiction? Well, fanfiction has a built-in fan base, which can be both really good and really daunting. A lot of people know Worm better than I do, and they're not exactly shy about making that clear. But it also means there's already a ton of established resources that I can use. There's the wiki, there's 1.5 million words from the story itself. There's so much to use and work with, and you can just ask people questions they already know. It's a lot of fun. And on the other side of things, writing an original story is really uh, freeing because, well, I'm the one making stuff up. But it's also daunting because I'm the one making stuff up. um, in some ways, it's scary because there's this fear that I'm going to forget something I said or something that I established and totally screw things up. That's why I'm really grateful to the people that maintain the lists and the TV tropes page and all that stuff. Also, the search function. I'm really liking the search function because it saved me from messing things up a couple times. And whenever there's something specific that I really don't want to forget for a upcoming chapter, I tend to have notes about those specific things written in the page that I'm writing on, so I can just glance down and see what I'm not supposed to be forgetting while I'm writing. So, yeah, that kind of helps.
What's your favorite fanfiction and why? Any other recommendations?
I'm gonna answer both of these together because, well, it's hard to say my favorite, and anything I list as liking a lot fits as a recommendation, so they go together. Uh, anyway, my favorite fanfiction, uh, God, a few off the top of my head are, of course, Silencio and Worm. Really sad that's not updating, but I also like A Cloudy Path by Lax Creativity. I actually stole his civilian names for Uber and Leet, which I hope he doesn't mind too much. um, in Harry Potter fanfiction, I like the Alexandra Quick series by Inverarity. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but yeah, Alexandra Quick by Inverarity. I like Murky Blue Matters series, the Pure Blood Pretense series. And in Star Wars, I've been reading the extensive and very well written series by An Origami Fish that's basically an alternate take on the Yuuzhan Vong that has Anakin Solo survive the Battle of Mirkir because Tahiri went back to help him. And, well, all of that's probably Greek to anyone that doesn't follow the original expanded universe of Star Wars, but, that's what I'm reading. Um, yeah.
Thank you very much, Cerulean, and I'll see you guys next week.